Hello everybody, 4-Star here, and we are back with the much anticipated, finally, the 7th season of the BFL, our best football league. And this is going to be my second fully recorded season of the BFL. And if you are new here, I got the entire 6th season of the BFL, including the playoffs of season 5 and the Mega Bowl of season 4, Mega Bowl 4, available to view on my channel. And I'll put all those playlists and Mega Bowl 4 in the description down below if you're ever interested. And if you do enjoy any of these lengthy style, documentary style videos of this fictional football league that I just have happened to pop up in my head and play, guys, like and subscribe, and even comment on who you think your favorite team is going to be here. Now let's get right into the action and the lore of the BFL, the best football league. So for those who don't know, this is a custom modded league that I play on Madden 2009 and 2008 sometimes. I dibble and dabble between the different games, but it is on the PS2 emulator, PCSX2. You must have a PC or laptop. I believe even Aether PS2 has an emulator on your tablets now, on your phones for a few years now, so you can also play it on that, and you can mod it on that as well if you got the skills to do it. But I can only do it on the PC. And I played with these teams in this league for several years now, dating all the way back to the PS2 days, back in 2012, when I formed the previous league here called the All-Star Football League, where I played 4 seasons before I transitioned into the BFL in 2019, still on my PS2. And then after 3 seasons of the BFL, I finally transitioned onto PC when I finally could afford it, back way before, just a week before the pandemic, when I finally assembled my PC. And then I was stuck at home, so I finally decided to make the BFL and transfer all the rosters and everything, even the lore, to the PC. So it has been fun ever since, and even modding these uniforms into real life has been a blast. And the name of the BFL, the best football league, came from my childhood days when I finally made my first league, when I got my first memory card, and I made the BFL way back in Madden 2003. And I don't even think I finished the season in that one, but it has been in my mind ever since. So that has been the name ever since. This season we are playing in tournament mode in Madden 09. I want to spice it up a little bit here as I alternate between the Maddens between 08 and 09. We are going to have a round robin format. 8 out of our 15 teams advancing to our single elimination playoffs, and the final 2 teams get to play in our championship game called the Mega Bowl, which is hosted by the highest seeded team remaining, and the winner becomes immortalized as champion and receives the coveted Andrews Memorial Trophy, which has been handed out since the ASFL days back in season 1. To keep the league fresh with new players and new storylines, we randomized the created team rosters, maintaining the players through a contract system that I've organized through Google Sheets, which can be viewed in the link down below. It also includes stats and a brief history tab of the league if you're interested in that too. We're also introducing Madden 09's player weapon traits that I modded via the Madden Extreme database editor, which makes the contracted players even better than before and makes them way more unique to the story of the league. Before we put any non-contracted randomized players in the tournament mode's fantasy draft, we do a rookie draft for players who have participated in my previous football leagues, including the NFL Europe and the UAL, with the UAL players getting drafted in the next following season in season 8, because I do want to do a season 2 for the UAL for the current players that are on there right now. As I said before, we have a BFL contract system to keep those special players in the league for multiple seasons, and it works like this. Starting from season 5, each of the 15 teams will have 30 roster points to give out contracts to players, with 5 types of contracts that can be given out to them. It ranges from gold, bronze, silver, and retirement contracts, also rookie contracts. They value from 0 to 5, with 0 being the rookie contracts being only 2 years in length, to all the way to the gold contracts, which are valued at 5 roster points and can have a max length of 5 seasons. These contracts can also help with the development of the star at the end of the season, as the gold contract all the way down to silver also values the performance of each player. So a gold contracted player will have to be performing at a top 5 all-pro level for them to develop. Meanwhile, silver contracts and bronze contracts don't have too much of an expectation, and they can develop accordingly depending on how well they did for that set of contract, which means like a silver contract, you're expected to do a little bit above the brand of a regular player that isn't contracted, and the bronze contract is kind of like a prove it year, so you can do at least slightly to significantly better than the regular replacement player that doesn't have a contract. For me, it is a good way to place storylines on how the players should be performing at that level at that time, while maintaining the continuity of the team, bringing them back, and having more of a storyline for the team itself. With the little fictional BFL CBA we have going on, there will be a 5-point increase towards roster points for the next 2 seasons, with the goal of reaching 40 points. I might be changing it to number value so we can have a $1 million value and maybe a salary cap with that. But until then, this is how we're going to do it now with roster points. Now let's get into the preseason rankings and predictions for this season, season 7. Now, ranking our teams in reverse draft order, in 15th place we got the lowly New York Jays, who went 2-12 last season. If you are a New York sports fan looking for a decent team to root for, well, the Jays aren't going to help you out, as they are coming off the worst season in franchise history, and the Jason Blake experiment at QB wasn't cutting it out. But there were still bright spots on this roster, such as their franchise running back Lamar Walker, who rushed for his 3rd straight 1,000-yard season this year, proving that he's one of the league's most consistent players. And then the defense is not too shabby either. Linebacker Sean Bates and edge rusher William Wade anchored the front 7, showing flashes of dominance at times. But in the offseason, the Jays went all in on free agency, signing veteran Corey Fitzgerald, a wide receiver from Dallas, and Andy Thompson, a second-year wide receiver who went to the Mega Bowl last season with Toronto his rookie year. They also re-signed rookie Derek Vincent last year, a guy who led the team in receiving yards. And the Jays also had other notable signings, such as All-Pro lineman Conrad Harris and T. Campbell. And with the first overall pick in the BFL draft, the Jays selected QB Kalen Blair from NFL Europe and the UAL, hoping that he can turn this franchise around. With their floor being 4-10 and their expected ceiling being 6-8, can Kalen Blair bring this team to their first ever playoff appearance in their franchise's 7-year history, the only team from the original 6 teams from the BFL to never make the playoffs? I think the biggest question I have for this team is that, can these bands of misfits, these guys who haven't worked out in other places like Corey Fitzgerald, like an Andy Thompson, like Derek Vincent, who just got re-signed, can they mesh well with Kalen Blair and this defense, who is only getting better? This team doesn't really have a shot like everybody else in this playoff race, but they can change some heads with a couple of key wins against some great teams like New Jersey, like Carolina, to make themselves known that they want to be part of this playoff pie too. But it's just way too early to find out, and let's see if the Kalen Blair experiment can work out a little bit better than Jason Blake did. Our next team, who placed 14th, are the Dallas Marshals. The Marshals are looking to bounce back after a 5-9 season that left them in second to last place again. Veteran QB Pat Kane remains optimistic, believing that his young squad can make a playoff push for the first time since season 4 due to a somewhat strong finish last year. The Marshals' original receiving core, Corey Fitzgerald and Jeremy Holmberg, are long gone, but breakout star Tony Christman and young talent like Jaquavius McKinney and veteran Asher Diggs, who won Mega Bowl 6 with New Jersey, form a new trio for Dallas. And the offensive line getting an automatic boost with the re-signing of a generational talent in left tackle Cameron Brown, signing that max gold contract and having the addition of Mark Tate, right tackle, to a 2-year bronze deal. These moves should help running back and a long-term running back Keenan Preston to reach his 4th straight 1,000-yard season. Fullback Chris Duncan is also a force on the backfield, as he has another great year, earning his first team All-Pro. And in the BFL draft, Dallas added linebacker Bobby Bowers with their second overall pick and picking up Joe Bryant in the second round to strengthen their defense alongside star players like Sammy Hayes, who had a breakout year scoring 8 sacks on the year. This team could be a force on defense if they play their cards right. Their expected floor is 4-10 and their ceiling is 8-6, which is a big gap, which means that they need Pat Kane to lead this young squad to some big wins against some fringe teams like in Ohio, like Atlanta, so that they can be brought back right back into relevancy and go right back into the playoffs. They haven't been in the playoffs since season 4, and they haven't been into a championship game since season 3. A little bit of a gap there, but this team can do it if everything falls exactly correct and they get some big wins against some weaker teams. The biggest question I have for the Dallas Marshals is that can this style of team go out and win games again? Now they're with a old style, running down their throats, 2 big running backs taking turns getting down the middle of the field. Obviously for Keenan Preston, he is a generational running talent here. He's one of the biggest power rushers that we have ever had in the league. He is in his 7th season in the league alongside Chris Duncan, who is, I believe, in his 3rd season in the league. But can this team really go through a lot of these generational defenses who are much more equipped to stop the pass as well as the run? And can this young core, this youngish core of newer guys mesh well with Pat Kane, and can Pat Kane get back to a season 2, season 3 form to put this team back into the playoffs? But with their ceiling and their floor predictions being so wide, anything can happen with this team. It really depends on how they do in this first half of the season. In 13th place are the Orlando Knight Riders at 5-9. The Knight Riders had one of the most roller coaster seasons in BFL history, starting at an abysmal 0-6 before finishing 5-3 in their last 8 games. Coaching staff changes were made after the locker room lost faith in the previous regime, which tried to replace Kenny Harrison with Jason Blake 2 seasons ago. Harrison has improved since then, sporting 3,500 yards and 35 tutties last season. The fan-dubbed Pritchard brothers, Devontae and Jonathan, no relation, are back for another 1,000-yard season in their respective positions. They also re-signed secondary receiver Patrick Parker to a bronze deal and sealing up a big deal with Bobby Lowe, all-pro corner for this team who has 6 INTs this year and a first-team all-pro to his name. And in this year's draft, Orlando added defensive tackle Janaris Diallo and wide receiver Kevin Lewis to make a playoff push. I have their floor at 5-9 and their ceiling at 9-5, meaning that this season could go either way with this dynamic squad. With this toxic coaching staff gone and a new regime putting in the plans together for Orlando, can they make that playoff push that they also needed and their first playoff appearance since season 5? The biggest question I pose this year is, can this coaching staff make this team consistent? They have a great roster with a lot of great guys who are still in their primes, like Kenny Harrison, like the Pritchard brothers, and like Bobby Lowe. They all have the tools to become probably one of the best teams in the league and a perennial playoff contender. But can they do it? Can they become consistent unlike last year and start off the season with a good record? Coming in 12th place are the Kansas City Scouts at 5-9. The Scouts are entering their 3rd season in franchise history, coming off their first sub-500 season last year. With quarterbacks Andy Hewitt and Austin Cole both on expiring contracts, the 26-year-old Cole gets the nod after a strong finish last season after the 36-year-old Hewitt chipped his collarbone late in the year. And with earning over 1,500 yards and almost 20 touchdowns in the final 6 games of the season, Cole might be the edge that the Scouts need in order to finally earn their first playoff appearance in franchise history. And veteran 34-year-old running back Ryan Clark, no, not that Ryan Clark, has announced his retirement contract this offseason, thanking the Kansas City faithful for making him the first starting running back in Scouts history. The front office did make a huge splash in free agency though, signing 2-time BFL champion defensive back Austin Pleasant from Miami to a 3-year gold contract and sits at a 98 overall to greatly improve this secondary, which were one of the greatest weaknesses this offseason for this squad. The Scouts also focus on their offensive line heavily, re-signing Michael Atkinson and drafting his younger brother Marquise alongside tackle Daniel Olafonwu in the 2nd round, with breakout stars like the French Rocket, wide receiver Vasco Laurent, who had a fantastic year with nearly 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns, to the Defensive Rookie of the Year, defensive end Tavian King, who led the league in sacks. This team could be a surprise to many this season. I have their ceiling at 8-6 and their floor at 5-9, which means that Austin Cole has to be the piece that makes this all work this year. The biggest question for me is that this team looks really good on paper, but can they beat the best of the best? Can they beat a New Jersey Dragons? Can they beat a Carolina Kings? And can they beat an upcoming squad in Denver who is really looking for BFL championship aspirations? They have to prove it here this year with a lot of their young talent and their older pieces too, such as Austin Pleasant, now that he's not with Miami, and an agent Ryan Clark. But do they have the skills to pay the bills and finally make it to the playoffs for the first time in their franchise's history? Here in 11th place are the Ohio Bulldogs, who sported a 6-8 record last year and narrowly missed the playoffs last year. And this year, they're hoping to take the next step. QB Deshaun McPherson, who was a Season 3 MVP, signed a gold contract last offseason, had a decent year, and now is under pressure to deliver here in Season 7. The Bulldogs kind of made a splash here in free agency, signing a two-time champion wide receiver Desmond Riley from Miami to a silver contract. He'll pair it with his cousin, wide receiver Dakota Riley, who's been with each other since childhood. He's inked a well-deserved contract with a gold deal, earning 906 yards and 12 touchdowns, giving Ohio a formidable receiving duo. Running back Jameson Jean-Baptiste was one of the bright spots of the offense, scoring 7 TDs while almost attaining a 1,000-yard season. And on the other side of the ball, the Bulldogs re-signed key contributors, including kicker Ron Figgins and linebacker J.J. Billups. And in the draft, they added defensive tackle Evan Howery and outside linebacker Walter Robinson to bolster their front seven. With a ceiling of 8-6 and a floor of 5-9, the Bulldogs are a team in transitions from the fallout from Season 5, where they gave up pieces like Tony McDaniel and Zeke Crawford. If McPherson can step up and the Riley cousins live up to expectations, this Ohio squad can sneak in the playoffs. But if this offense sputters, it could be another long season in Columbus. In 10th place are the LA Gold at 6-8. The Gold are entering a pivotal season this year, this being the first year in franchise history without Hall of Fame linebacker Josh Schmidt, who served 6 seasons with 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards. The Gold are determined to prove that they can remain competitive as they use all 30 of their roster points to reload this roster for this year. And it all starts with Nate Whitman, the captain of this team. Now for his 4th season, he carried this offense alongside Sheldon Massey, the running back, amassing 3,500 yards and 30+ touchdowns this year. And with veteran wide receiver Jeremy Holmberg parting ways with the squad in lieu of a championship with Miami, Seth Bynum will have to be the one to carry the mantle as wide receiver 1, last year sporting 700 yards and 3 touchdowns onto the year. On defense, Jared Lowe, last season Defensive Player of the Year, which makes it 3 for this franchise alone, was also signed to a gold deal and will move to middle linebacker to replace Josh Schmidt. They also have potent weapons on the secondary and line with Brad Emanuel at corner and Cornelius Wheeler leading the interior. The Gold also added depth at wide receiver, signing former longtime New York wide receiver Will Adams and Jackie Crockett to bronze contracts, while breakout rookie John Clausen was locked up with a silver deal. And in the draft, the Gold focused on beefing up their trenches, selecting center Kenny Curtis to bolster up that offensive line and picking up the outside linebacker Vaughn Turner in the 2nd round to replace Lowe on the outside. With my ceiling of them being 7-7 and a floor of them being 4-10, the Gold will have to rely heavily on their offense, especially with quarterback Nate Whitman alongside their stacked defense. Can Nate Whitman elevate his game and lead this team to the playoffs, or will Josh Schmidt's absence be too much to overcome? An even bigger question for that defense. In 9th place, just outside of that playoff bubble, are the Atlanta Bullets at 6-8. The Bullets are a team with high potential but lingering questions. Despite quarterback D. Singleton's incredible record-breaking 52 total touchdown season last year, the Bullets were blown out by Carolina in the season finale, missing the playoffs. This offseason, Atlanta re-signed veteran running back Darnell Wicks, who still remains as a reliable workhorse, and added defensive end Seth Jeffries and tackle Carlos Oldham from Denver to bolster both ends of the trenches. Rookies linebacker Ty Jensen and wide receiver Jermaine Price were the big bright spots last year, and the Bullets are counting on them to take that next step in the development. Legendary wide receiver Keith Manning produces another amazing season with 78 receptions, nearly 1,200 yards, and a baker's dozen of touchdowns. And in the draft, Atlanta focused on defense, selecting defensive backs Eric Miller and Marquez Jackson to address a secondary that seriously struggled last season. And with my predicted ceiling of 9-5 and a floor of 6-8, the Bullets are a team that lives and dies by D. Singleton's heroics. If the defense can improve and the young players step up, Atlanta could definitely make a playoff push. But if Singleton doesn't get enough support, I can see them having another disappointing year, barely missing the playoffs again. Number 8 on the list was the Detroit Demons, who went 6-8 and barely squeezed into the playoffs. The Demons were one of the feel-good stories of last season, sneaking into the playoffs after a strong finish and some fortunate luck. This year, they're looking to build on that success. Quarterback Lance Shutt, MVP candidate Tamarick Clay, and wide receiver Randall Bynum all signed together with 4-year gold contracts, signaling the Demons' commitment to their core. Shutt in particular has shown flashes of brilliance, but needs to be more consistent to take this team to the next level. Meanwhile, Detroit also re-signing their veterans Danny Castle, the corner, and Curtis Preston, a wide receiver, to 3-year deals, adding stability to both sides of the ball. And in free agency, they signed former New York Jays and Orlando Knight Riders wide receiver Jay Sean Myers to a 2-year bronze deal, giving Shutt yet another weapon on the offense. With my ceiling having them 9-5 and a floor of 6-8, the Demons are a well-balanced team with a mix of young stars and veteran leaders. If Shutt can elevate his game, Detroit could be a dark horse contender, but if he struggles, the Demons might find themselves on the playoff bubble once again. And next, surprisingly in 7th place, are the Miami Cyclones, who went 8-6 this year. The Cyclones are coming off of a disappointing loss to Denver, ending their quest for a 3rd straight Mega Bowl title, which would have put them in the history books as one of the biggest and first dynasties here in the BFL. Despite the setback, this team still remains as one of the most talented teams in the league. The Cyclones lost key players like cornerback Austin Pleasant to Kansas City and wide receiver Desmond Riley to Ohio, but they've added veteran wide receiver Jeremy Holmberg to help fill the void. Miami is also betting on young talent, such as running back Austin King taking over for the departing Eric Young, and wide receivers Matt Nash and Damon Partman continuing to develop, as Matt Nash in particular had an amazing season, over 1,000 yards with 9 touchdowns. The duo of QB Rex Johnson and wide receiver BB Cash are one of the greatest QB wide receiver duos in BFL history, with BB's record-breaking seasons that earned him back-to-back Offensive Player of the Year awards for seasons 5 and 6, not to mention his 2 Mega Bowls and an MVP in Mega Bowl 5, and with Rex rekindling his dominating ASFL days by becoming the BFL Season 4 MVP and becoming a 4-time champion between both leagues. They come back once again in the middle of their gold contracts as they are in their 4th season together and now looking for their 3rd title together as a duo. The Cyclones also locked up several young stars, including tight end Antonio Garcia and stud defensive back TJ Siegel, both to long-term deals. And with the now absence of Austin Pleasant, TJ Siegel is really going to have to pick up the slack here as he's looking for his first team All-Pro. With my ceiling having them at 10-4 and a floor of 7-7, Miami stays a perennial contender. Their experience and talent are what make them a threat to win it all, but the loss of key players could make the road to a Mega Bowl just a bit tougher this year. And with the threat of losing their one chance to have a dynasty, 3 championships in 4 years in jeopardy, this team will have to pull out all the stops to remain relevant here in this very competitive BFL Season 7. Next in 6 are the Oakland Grizzlies, who went 9-5 last year. The Oakland Grizzlies are coming off of a stellar season led by MVP quarterback Luke McCoy, who set BFL records with 4,592 passing yards and 47 touchdowns, both records. And with McCoy leading the charge, this team is loaded with weapons from head to toe and are ready to make another deep playoff run. Wide receiver Tariq Jammer, who had a breakout rookie year, was signed to a max gold contract, ensuring that he remains the cornerstone of the offense. Meanwhile, veteran wide receiver Leland Jackson signed a retirement contract, giving the Grizzlies one last season of his leadership and playmaking ability, and he was also part of that inaugural championship team back in season 3. And also joining from that inaugural team is running back Jed Cornell and all-pro corner Todd Jordan, adding depth and experience to this roster. With my prediction of a ceiling of 10-4 and a floor of 8-6, this Grizzlies team is a well-rounded unit with a high-powered offense and a solid defense. If Luke McCoy can replicate his MVP performance, Oakland could be lifting up that Mega Bowl trophy at the end of the season. And they also can give the longtime veteran leader Leland Jackson one last chance to hoist up that Andrews trophy once again to end his career. Ending up in 5th are the Boston Revolution. The Revs ended up their season with another 10-4 season, and they had the 3rd seed this year. The Boston Revolution are coming off back-to-back 10-win seasons, but their playoff run ends in disappointment with a 38-20 loss to New Jersey. Quarterback Anthony Vales took a huge step forward this year, throwing for 3,700 yards and 35 touchdowns while cutting down on the interceptions, a big issue from the previous season. The Revs lock up wide receiver DeAndre Lane as he earns a max gold contract after an all-pro caliber season, almost amassing 1,000 yards. And season 6 MVP Corey Smith notched another 1,000-yard season even at his older age of 30. The Revs also re-signed breakout cornerback Travis Abrams and all-pro center Mario Atkins to 2-year deals while still having rising corner Keenan Vance on a rookie deal. In the draft, they focus on defense once again, adding edge rusher Desmond Trailer and defensive tackle Jordan Griffin. But I think the biggest question for me is this enough to break through back into Mega Bowl contention again? With a ceiling of 11-3 and a floor of 8-6, this team is always going to be a contender with solid franchise players now locked up on offense and on defense. But once again, will they be able to beat the best teams in the league when the time comes to finally make it back to that Mega Bowl championship game? And 4th is one of my favorite teams to make it all the way to the championship, the Denver Dynamo. The Denver Dynamo had a historic season, finishing 10-4, their best record in franchise history, making it to the semifinals before falling to Toronto at home. Despite the tough loss last season from Toronto, this team is coming back with a vengeance, and it looks like they're going to be having more experience than ever for this season. Quarterback Ricky Bledsoe had an all-pro year, throwing for 4,000 yards, with wide receivers Chris Barber and rookie Quandre Stevenson both topping 1,000 yards on the year. On defense, they also have all pros as well, including Brendan Gill, who won Defensive Player of the Year last year with 6 INTs, 2 forced fumbles, and a defensive touchdown. The Dynamo front office went all out rewarding their stars, signing Bledsoe, Stevenson, Lamar Harrison, Casper Perry, and Brandon Gill all to long-term deals. They also re-signed former Miami Cyclones defensive end Thomas Warren, nearly maxing out their cap space, but it was well justified as Warren tallied 8 sacks and forced a fumble in the year. This Dynamo team is stacked with a lot of young and hungry talents here. I tallied them at a ceiling of 12-2, my highest ceiling that I have for a team yet, and a floor of 8-6. The Dynamo are a complete team, straight up, top to bottom. From young stars like Bledsoe and Gill to veterans like Chris Barber and Lamar Harrison, Denver is poised to compete for another Mega Bowl and can be in multiple playoffs and even Mega Bowls in the next few years. Next, falling into the 3rd spot are the Carolina Kings. The Kings are also perennial contenders, earning that #1 seed the 3rd time in their franchise's history last season before falling to New Jersey in the semifinals. This year, they'll have to adjust after the retirement of wide receiver Brock Randall, who spent 10 seasons with the King, including the ASFL seasons, and surely is a BFL Hall of Famer in the future. Now with Brock Randall's absence, wide receivers Alonzo O'Neal and wide receiver Damian Kelly will have to step up. And the Kings drafted 6'6" wide receiver Angelo Williams to develop as Randall's replacement one day. Meanwhile, the dynamic duo of Rob Griffith and Rocky Humphrey tore up the field again, with Griffith having a 4,000-yard season with 35 touchdowns and Rocky having over 1,500 yards from scrimmage and 15 touchdowns. And on defense, Rookie of the Year defensive end Benjamin Dexter took the league by storms with his 9 sacks on the year, and his companion linebacker Ronnie Reed made huge strides last year, turning this unit into one of the league's best. Even with that absence of Brock Randall off the roster, I still have this team with a ceiling of 10-4 and a floor of 7-7. The Kings will have to rely heavily on the veterans Griffith and Humphrey to carry this offense, with a little sprinkle of those youngsters on the receiving corps. But as defenses around the league improve, can Griffith and Humphrey adapt to keep Carolina at the top? And for the Mega Bowl runners-up, it is the magical season that the Toronto Golden Owls had, sporting a 9-5 record led by a quarterback and a rookie, Tyrone Hastings, who was drafted first overall and immediately made an impact. He threw for 3,200 yards, rushed for 1,100, and accounted for 36 total touchdowns, with him earning Rookie of the Year honors, barely edging out a young Tariq Jammer. And former Ohio running back Zeke Crawford had a renaissance year, turning back the clock as he rushed for over 1,100 yards and 15 rushing touchdowns, earning him the Renaissance Man of the Year award. Kicker Don Riddle also shined, winning Special Teams Player of the Year after hitting 3 game-winning field goals and accruing for 129 points for the Owls. The Owls' legendary receiving core of Andy Thompson, Joey Grantmont, and Jelani Simon is mostly intact, with Thompson leaving for New York. Former Ohio Bulldog and veteran wide receiver Tony McDaniel remains a mentor for potentially his final season, as he is aging out at the age of 36. Simon, however, was the outright breakout star with 846 yards and 8 touchdowns onto the year. And of course, how could I forget the defensive stalwart, one of the leaders of this squad since its inception back in season 5, that's Kevin Forbes. He had 8 sacks on the year. He's a Mega Bowl 3 champion with Oakland, and he's a 3-time first team All-Pro, one of the best to ever play our sport, and one of the best edge rushers in the league, and probably one of my favorites for Defensive Player of the Year. With my personal ceiling being 10-4 and a floor of 7-7, the Golden Owls are looking to build up on their Mega Bowl run. But will the sophomore slump hit Hastings hard and the young core, or will they make a deep playoff push for the future, showing that this will be the team to beat this year? And then finally, sitting on top of that #1 spot are the 8-6 New Jersey Dragons, the reigning champions. The Dragons made history as the lowest seeded team to win a Mega Bowl. Entering the playoffs as a 6th seed, they dominated their way to the title, humiliating Boston, holding off Carolina, and blowing out Toronto in the Mega Bowl for their 2nd chip in 5 years. And their main piece and driving force to that championship was quarterback Rashard Murphy. He had a legendary season, throwing for 3,600 yards, rushing for over 1,000, and accounting for 43 total touchdowns. Despite him not even having a 1,000-yard receiver this year, the Dragons' offense were electric due to him, and their defense stepped up where they needed to in the playoffs. Murphy's top 2 receivers, being longtime targets Steve Gross and Rodney Parker, both produced 700-yard seasons and a down year, especially for Gross. Phil Quick also had a down year, rushing for just under 800 yards while still scoring a formidable 8 touchdowns. As the Defensive Rookie of the Year the previous season, OJ Knight struggled as well, only getting 1 pick this year with only a handful of deflections. And even with the disappointing performances this year in the regular season, the Dragons show off their playoff experience with players like Quick, Parker, and Gross to turn back the clock with iconic playoff performances to beat the best teams in the league, such as the Revs and the Kings, to win their 2nd BFL title, with Rashard Murphy's ultimate goal to host that Mega Bowl in Jersey and to hoist that Andrews Trophy in front of those faithful Dragons fans at home. This offseason, the Dragons re-signed key players like wide receiver Mike Carroll, the Offensive Rookie of the Year the previous season, and wide receiver Trey Flanagan, while adding safety OJ Knight on a max deal. They also drafted cornerback Desmond Dixon and defensive tackle Rocco Swain to bolster their defense. And with my personal ceiling of them having another 10-4 season and a floor of a 7-7 season, the Dragons are hungry to defend this title. But the big question is, can Rashard Murphy and his young, hungry defense make another legendary run, or will the championship hangover be too much to overcome? Alright guys, now that we got the team predictions out the way, I want to personally put some awards members and maybe some predictions for the awards for you guys to look out for during this season. Now guys, we have a couple of awards here that I want to cover, like MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, and I might skip some like Special Teams Player of the Year and stuff like that. But for MVP, my prediction personally is Ricky Bledsoe. I just think that he had an amazing year last year. He got 2nd team All-Pro, over 4,000 yards, over 40 touchdowns, and 8 INTs. And if it wasn't for Luke McCoy's crazy middle of the season, I think he would have got it hands down. And I think with this unit that he has so far, I just think that personally for me, he just can't do no wrong. He has a great offense and then a great defense backing him up. I just think that he's going to get an MVP personally. I think he's going to have just over 45 touchdowns and over 4,000 yards. I don't think he's going to break Luke McCoy's record of 4,500. He might get close like 4,300 and 4,400, but I think he's going to be around that range, and he's going to score basically over 43.5 touchdowns this year. For Offensive Player of the Year, it's hard to try to debate BB Cash. Now, he's a back-to-back Offensive Player of the Year award winner, winning in season 6 and in 5, and I just see no difference here. I mean, Rex Johnson, he still has the arm. Even though he's getting up there in age, he still is elite. He's still an elite quarterback. He can still throw dots down the field, and BB Cash, he could just outrun everybody. So honestly, I have him just over 1,200 yards in maybe an 18 touchdown season. He gets close to his record of 21, but so far, I just think that BB Cash is above and beyond one of the best wide receivers we've ever seen in the BFL. For Defensive Player of the Year, it's a tricky one because I definitely want to see a defensive tackle make it here. But guys like Todd Jordan, Aaron Tucker, Brendan Gill, Bobby Lowe, those defensive backs are just absolutely insane. But if I had to pick somebody, it has got to be Kevin Forbes. He is just a leviathan out there on that field, and I really believe he's going to be the first defensive player to ever break the 10 sack mark. You heard it here first, guys. I think he's going to have at least 11 or 12 sacks this year and bring those Golden Owls back to the playoffs. As for the Offensive and Defensive Rookies of the Year, it is a highly competitive list, but I think the Rookie of the Year for the offense has to go to Kalen Blair. He's going to have starting reps. He's going to be the main one on the offense, and I just think he's going to get it just off of the fact that he's a quarterback and he's going to get some good numbers. For the Defensive Player of the Year, it's a tough one. I think Jannars Diallo and Evan Howery are both very good interior rushers, but I got to give the edge to Evan Howery. He is a little bit older at 26. A 26-year-old rookie is crazy, but not too much here in our league with the small amount of teams we have. I just think he has the experience of his previous leagues to just get in there and get started quickly and to really put the Bulldogs in a good situation coming towards the end of the year. And then finally, for that Renaissance Man of the Year or the Comeback Player of the Year here, I think it's going to be between Steve Gross, the wide receiver of New Jersey, and Austin Cole, the quarterback for Kansas City. Now, for Steve Gross's case, only 700 yards is very much a disappointing season for a wide receiver one like himself, but I think he can really rebound, have a 1,000-yard season, get a handful of touchdowns, which would include like at least 10 touchdowns or at least close to 10 to really put him back into that all-star, that all-pro list here. For Austin Cole, obviously he's going to get the reps here for the Kansas City Scouts, so he's going to get some good numbers. And then of course, when you add great receivers like the French Rocket Vasco Laurent, who has really showed out last year with almost 1,000 yards, I think that is just almost automatic that Austin Cole gets the Comeback Player of the Year or the Renaissance Man of the Year award here. And that is it for my predictions of my BFL, the best football league, here in season 7. I want to thank everybody for making it this far into the video here. This was quite a lengthy video with a lot of cards and graphics here that I personally had a good time with making. And I want to thank Pinholes Graham. He is a hockey YouTuber. I will have his channel up on the screen and in the description down below for the idea of these cards, of the players and everything. I definitely got some huge inspiration from him, and I want to thank you guys all for watching. We got episode 1 of the BFL coming soon right into you. It shouldn't take no less than about 2 weeks. It's a lot of games in store. It's going to be at least about 8 weeks into the season, and hopefully you guys will enjoy that lengthy documentary style video as well. But I want to thank you guys once again for making it this far in the video and liking the video and enjoying the content that I've provided so far. I know this is kind of a ridiculous league here that I've made off the top of my head, but hopefully you guys are enjoying the journey as much as I am. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Enjoy the rest of your lovely day, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.